Hello everyone, in this side project video we'll try to build something similar to an Excel sheet, and we could have a grid or a flexible grid. We could also do equations like this one. We could also do some complex equations, like I could take P6 plus 20 for example, multiplied by 10, and then it would be evaluated. When I change this number, it would also affect it, and we will build the whole state management system using RecoilJs. So let's get started. Let's start with describing what is Recoil. It's basically a state management library for React, similar to Mobix or Redux. What I like about this library, it has two main features that I think it's very good. First, of course, it's minimal, it's very small. You don't have many complex stuff like Mobix, for example. You have to build a lot of things. Secondly, it allows for shared state, where you could create, for example, like a global state in your window and then share it among your components. So anyone could access it, write to it, read from it. You similar to you would have like a single store, for example, but instead of this you would have a small parts. They call it atoms, and they are a small state or a very basic or simple state which is shared among all the components. We will see how it looks. Of course, if you are more interested how Recoil works and the internals of it, you could watch the videos they put on their website here. And also I would put link for a course if you are more interested to read about it. Although it is very simple, and when we see the documentation, it consists of very basic parts. So let's jump into the documentation. To add the library to our application, we have many ways to add it, like npx, npm, yarn, power, and then we have the main components of our library. So before we start jumping into it, we could think of RecoilJs similar to how we think of React context provider. So we have a provider which encapsulate all our application around it, and then we have the states or the things that we are going to share it among our components, for example. So the first thing, which is a provider, would be called Recoil root. You don't have to think it as provider, but something to like integrate Recoil with your application. Then we have the states, and they call it here atoms, which consist of like key, and then there is the default value of it when you start this state. And then there is how to access the states. First, we have something called use recoil state, which allows you to either read or write to the state. And there is another function to similar to it. It's called use recoil value, which just allows you to read it. Then we have something additional, which is called selectors. It allows you to transform the value. For example, if you want to transform a certain value through an equation, or you want to change a hexadecimal to, for example, like RGPA, like you want to do some transformation in it, and also you would have the effect directly, or your component would update. It's similar to, for example, if we don't have this selector, you would have the value, you read it, and then when you would like to change it, you create your function, and after you change this value, you would have to invoke a use effect to update your component. But instead of all of this, you would have the selector, which allows you to just update your system and pass the new value and transform it directly. So these are the main functions or the main components of our library. And now let's start with building our application. Before we start hammering the keyboard and start writing any line of code, first we have to put a plan how our application would behave, what it's going to consist of. This is the final thing. Why we are doing this? To put a roadmap for our application, to put some thought inside of it. Because if you start just writing some code, you would might get distracted, you might need to refactor all your application, you might eventually write bad code. This is not good. So first we start to draft what our application is going to consist of, and then start writing any line of code. So we know that our application is an Excel sheet, and it could consist of multiple columns, multiple rows, and inside each of these there is our cell. So first we would have cell component, and then we would have row component, and we would have our column. Of course, we know this, all of this would be our column, but we only need this small part because eventually we'll have like multiple columns and then column. We don't like create all of this. So we would have another component called column. After that, we have all of this, we call it sheets or sheet. Eventually, we would have multiple sheets in our application or in our future application that we would like to do. All of this, in this case, would wrap around sheets container. Okay. And when we think about states, of course, cell would have its own state, like its value, it is edited, it's currently the text, it's evaluated. These like column and rows, they are just like artistic or some UI. It doesn't have a state. We have state for sheet. Why would have state for sheet? Because we know that we need to make this flexible, like we could change the size of it and it would add like more cells here or remove cells. So this would have like state and it would be like size or something. Okay. Currently we would see like we would need like state for container. We would see how the code would eventually evolve. So this would be like our application. So let's start with writing our code and then installing the project. So far I have created a Git repo to push like our comments and our project. Also in the description of this video you would find link for the GitHub repository which would have like the final project. So let's create our React application. Of course, make sure you would have like npm, node, yarn, all of this good stuff. So npx create React app, and we'll call our application Excel sheets and template TypeScript because we want to use TypeScript here. Hopefully now after a very long time and our application is ready. So let's start first with moving all of these folders up level, and then let's delete this one, and then let's start our application, and it should be, yeah, now it's starting. Okay, let's do some cleaning for our application because we don't need all of this. Don't need all of this. Let's say like hello, and yeah, everything is great. Okay, let's do this. Also, we don't need the logo now here. Okay, now we have everything ready. Let's open our commit and let's add our first commit. Git add, git commit, and initial commit. Okay, now first thing first, we need to create our first small component, which is our cell. So let's create a folder called components, and inside of it we would have our cell component, and we would have cell.tsx. We would use here CS modules, so we would have like CS modules with CSS. Okay, and I am using also something called like live templates or like very short things to write components faster. So this one would create our components directly, and we would using also TypeScript. So we would have function component, which is the type for our cell or our type of this component. We also have cell props, which are the props which are going to be passed, and we have the cell module here. So let's make sure everything is working. Cell hello. Let's go to our application and import it. We don't need all of this, and let's import our cell, maybe like this. Yeah. Sometimes auto import doesn't work. Okay, let's do this. It doesn't work, doesn't found it. So I have disabled ESLint because it's doing some strange behavior. So let's import our cell and maybe add some hello or something. Yeah. And let's refresh. Yep, everything is working, everything is fine. Okay, for our cell component, we are going to build the edit thing. Like if you click on the cell, it would change to our input field, and then if you click outside the cell, it then shows like the text or the things that is inside it. So we would need two things. First, we need a state, which would call it is edit mode, and this would be use state from React. Of course, it needs to have a state, call it false because it will start with false. And then we would have two things. First, if it's edit mode, we would show the input, and if it's not, we would show our div. Okay, yeah, it's complaining about this. Let's remove the brackets and everything would be fine. Of course, we would pass children into this one. So we would have children, and it's of type component type. Yes. Okay. And yeah, let's add it here. This is props to children. This one would have, currently would say like value is props to children. Of course, we would change this to the state eventually. Yeah, or we could remove this for now. Okay, what we have here, yeah, cell hello. Yeah, because this also could be a string. Yes, it will refresh. Yeah, so edit mode is false. Its edit mode is false. Yeah, it should show our this one. Yeah, this is strange. Okay, yeah, we need to have is edit mode, and also set is edit mode, because first we would we're returning the whole array, which is of course it's true always. Okay, now we have this one. Now we need, when we click on our div, it would change this to our input field. So we would have one click on this one, and let's do it some nicer. Yeah, let's shorten this a little. Okay, so on click it would have let's call it change label to input. Okay, this would be a function, const function, and this one would be an event, and we would call this one, as far as I remember, HTML click mouse event. HTML mouse event. It's called mouse event, I guess. Mouse event, yes. Okay, and or yeah, we could also remove this, we don't need it eventually. Okay, and this would be set it is edit mode to true. Now let's try it. Yes, it's turning into it. Now we need second part, that when we click or click outside, we need this one to disappear. So let's do this one. We'll call it const change input to label, and this one will be set is edit mode to false. Of course, we need something to invoke it, like when we click outside, it changes this one. This would be a use effect. because this is like a behavior or things that we need to do. Yeah, let's do this one, and it would be document dot add event listener. This would be a click because we click from outside. Yeah, let's close this one. Okay, of course this is not good because we need to also remove this one, so we would call this one const. So we would add the event. Yeah, let's add it back. Yeah, there will be some errors, and instead of creating function inside this one, you would call change or click outside on click outside input handler. Yeah, this is better. This would be a function, and this would be here, this one, and we need to remove it after the effect. This is when you return like from use effect, you basically you would remove this effect when this one, like this component, is being like killed or destroyed. Okay, now we need what we need to do. We need to achieve that when we click outside, this one disappears, like the input field. But which input field do we know, like which one? So to identify it, we would use ref. So we add const input ref. This is like reference for our component or our like input field. Of course, like there are many ways to do this, but let's do use ref and set this one to null, and input ref. This is reference. Let's give it currently like an ID. Maybe we call it data cell ID because we would need to use that in the future. Also, instead of using ID, let's give it now like ID of 2. And here, okay, so this one would be a little bit complex, like because of TypeScript. So this would be HTML, not HTML, it's mouse event. Okay, and from our event we would say, okay, if the event is not me, like if it's not like the input, because I might be clicking into the input, so I would say like event.target.datasets.cell ID is not equal to 2. Maybe do this one. Of course it doesn't know this one, like it doesn't identify like target is, it might have data set because the click might be document or like other things, like maybe like the body, so it doesn't have data set. But of course we are not sure, like we are clicking the body or we are clicking another element, so we need to say, okay, it's not my cell, it is not me, because also it might be like another cell you are trying to click. So this one would be as HTML input element. Yes, and it has cell ID. It might not have cell ID. Let's do this one here. Yeah, it's here, and let's do this here, and it fails. Okay, let's change this one to HTML element instead. Yeah, and this one doesn't need to be dataset, it needs it's dataset only. Okay, and inside our if, okay, yeah, it would refresh. Let's see in our inspector, and let's add this one to be at the bottom just to be better, more friendly. Clear all of this. Yeah, it's cleared, and let's console log it. console.log target and .dataset. Yeah, it would always complain. Okay. So when we click this one, yep, now we are clicking outside. Cool. Now if it's not the cell, it is not the same ID or not me, we want to change it to label. So change input to label. Invoke this one. Now let's refresh and try it. Yeah, we might have some issues here. Let's console log it. Refresh. Yeah, it is not, it wouldn't get inside all of this because you are checking like dataset. This one doesn't have dataset, so it wouldn't get inside it. Maybe you could add like else. Or okay, now we find like when we click on it, it doesn't change, and this is because you click on the div and the div doesn't have like data cell ID. So let's add this one, and yeah, if we refresh it, yep, it's working. If I do something, get outside, it is doing its job. So now we have finished the first part, which would change it from like edit mode to non-edit mode. We will do now the global state, or using the React state, because we want to have eventually values inside each one of these cells, which could be accessed by any other component or any other things that we want to evolve. This is the part where we will start using Recoil. So let's close our application and add Recoil. So yarn add Recoil and add types Recoil to add also the TypeScript part. Now it had add our Recoil parts. So let's start importing it inside our cell, and we would have const cell state or cell value state. Let's call it cell value state. Before we continue, let's commit all of this. Get add, get commit, and let's call this one created cell, and add it to Recoil library, and add it Recoil library. Okay, cool. Let's now create the state. Const cell value state, and like we said, we have like atom, and the atom would have key, which we call it cell currently, and we have default, which is empty thing. Okay, let's import atom. Also, it is not working again. Let's import it directly here. Import atom from Recoil. Sometimes the application just needs some like restarting or something. Yeah, cool. Now we have the cell value. Let's use it inside. I would prefer like combining these. Yeah, it's way better. Okay, we have const, and we need two things like setting the value and reading the value. So we'll have cell value and set cell value, which would be use recoil state, and this would be our cell value state. We need to define the type, which would be string, and yep. And let's see this error. Okay, it doesn't find it. Yeah, we haven't imported. Yep, now it's good, and it has state. Let's clean this one. Let's read the value, and instead of having children props, we don't need this one, and this one will be value equal cell value. Let's add something here just to see it. Yeah, we need to start the application again. Okay, what is that? Yes, we need to add recoil root. Yeah, we forgot to add this one. Okay, recoil root, close this one. Yep, and it should now work. Yeah, we now have our state. Okay, now we also need, when we change the input, we also change the value. So we have here for this one, on it change, let's call it yes, update cell value state. This would be one of our events functions, const update recoil value state. This one would be set cell value, and we have our value here, and this is our value, or this is our event, which should be on change event as far as I remember, or change event. Yeah, it's a change event, and we have event dot target dot value. This also need type, which should be HTML input element type. So we have our change element, and yeah, it should work now. Let's update it. Yeah, now we have a global state that can be used everywhere, and we have also our cell. Let's remove this one away from here. Let's create something we call store, and cell value state with ts. Yes, and let's remove this one from here. It's not needed, or it is needed of course, but to make everything clean. Yeah, we need to put this one up. So we have the cell, and then we have to import this one. Let's put it here, and we should have everything clean. Now we have our global state. Now comes the next part, which is building our rows, our columns. This one you could, if you like, you could skip it, but it's part of our application. It's not necessary, but I'm creating inside this one. Let's delete, and let's create new folder, row. New folder, row. Okay, I think these ones need to be like inside this cell. Okay, let's do some check. Yeah, it's inside this cell. We need to put this one outside. Yes, now it works. This new thing, column, and inside also need our sheet. Now we're creating like the grid system. So we have column dot tsx, and we have column dot module dot css. Here we have row dot tsx, row dot module dot css. Create also the one for the sheet, and one for its module.css. Okay, of course all of these would eventually be inside container, which our sheets container. So we create a folder called container or maybe to have the same namings, containers, and then we would have sheets container dot tsx, and it's module dot css. Okay, and before we continue, let's commit our things. So let's create another one here. Git add git commit dot. We could delete all of these and then do. Let's do it from here. It's this one. We don't need this one. This one. This one. We don't need it. And sheets and all of these. All of this, and then we would add the commit would be create recoil state for the cell. Okay, these ones, let's add all of them. Git add. Okay, and this would be, let's do it here. Git commit create grid cells. Yeah, let's change the name of the last commit. It's not great. Undo last commit, and it's, yeah, should be like create a grid cell instead of like create cell, would be like grid element. Okay, now let's remove all of these, close all, and then we would have the first. Let's start from the outside. We would have the sheets container, rfc m, and then we have the sheets. It of course have props, and props would be of type component type or string, or currently it would be like only component type, so no need. Okay, and this would be props.children, and let's clean this one. Yep, now it's good. Let's also take this one to inside elements, and you would have the sheets rfccm, and you would have this one here. Let's import it, and then we would have props.children. Okay, let's add also the one for the row, rfcm row, and let's add the props. Same thing, it is props.children every element of these, and let's change this one to import it as well. rfcm. I wish if there is like an automated tool for React, like write all of these, and maybe we could create this one, you know. Okay, props.children. Okay, now we have created our column, row, and everything. Let's import our sheets container inside our app instead of our cell. Okay, yeah, let's go to our node element. Yeah, it is because you haven't imported. Okay, sheets container, and this one let's import it manually. Import sheet container from containers / sheets container. Yeah, let's move this one, and let's remove all of these, we don't need it. Okay, and children. Oh, I think we have done a big mistake. Children. Yeah, and it's, of course, it is not required. Yeah, okay, children not required. And children not required. Okay. Okay, looks like we don't actually need children. It's already defined inside the function component. So all of this have been waste. Okay, let's remove all of this. And this one as well. Okay. And after we have removed the children, of course this error would eventually be moved when we define like each one of these. So let's first define like the container. This one would be of course of table. Okay, now like you see it's now vanished. Of course it would have like columns, and it would complain because each one of these have some errors. Let's remove the errors for these ones. Sheet would be our T body maybe. Okay, and then we would have the rows. It would be our TR, and the columns would be our TD. While we are using table, it's easy, just it. We don't need anything else. Okay, let's restart it. Yes, now it's working. Okay, let's go to our sheets. This will have of course type sheet. Yeah, the auto import part. Okay, I will restart the application. Now let's continue and let's add our row here. Okay, yeah, now it's working. And inside our row we would have like multiple columns, and inside each column we would have our cell, and it is not imported. Yeah, okay, it's manually imported. Cell, this one, cell and cell. Yeah, okay, and yeah, the same thing about children. Yeah, let's go to this file and let's remove this one. Okay, and let's go back to our sheet. Yes, okay, we would have multiple columns and multiple rows. Of course we wouldn't do that, but just to think of it. Yarn start. Okay, now let's refresh. Of course everything is like empty because we don't have like any value inside our table. If we inspect it, we probably would see the table. Like inside this one, yeah, the table. We haven't imported the sheets probably. Yeah, we have only created the table. Okay, I would also put this inside. Let's add this to our sheet, and let's close this one. Yeah, let's add it here. This one would be table. Also, if yeah, this one, and sheets is not imported, let's import it, and yeah, it would be here instead. Let's put it here. It would be inside components, sheet, yeah, this one. Okay, let's see, we have our table, we have our table body, we have each row. Let's go to our row. Yeah, it needs to have children here instead. Hops.children, and of course our column would be the same thing. Props.children. Now we have our table and with like the random value, and yeah, everything of course like clicking because each one has the same ID. Okay, let's close all of these to declutter everything. Let's go here and let's create our grid. Let's move all of this. So how we are going to do our flexible grid? We want to have width and size, width and height, and when we change each one of these, it would eventually change the number of cells and columns. Okay, so let's see how we are going to do it now. And before we continue, let's first commit all of this just to have everything clean. And it's here, created grid the components of the sheet. Okay, we pushed it. Now let's create our sheet. So first we would have a new state. We would call it sheet size state.ts. Let's go here and we would create an atom. So const sheet size state. This is an atom imported from Recoil. Don't know, it's better. This one is better. Okay, we call it sheet size state. Let's call it like this. And this would be like the key. And then there is the default. We would have width. Let's have 600 for now, and the height would be 600. Let's export this one as well. Let's import it here. Const. And first we would like to read it, but also we would eventually want to resize it, so we might need to import it. But first let's only read the value. I think only we would need to read it. So sheet size is equal to, here we would use only use recoil value. We don't need to use the whole state. Okay, and we need to import, this is not also an array, this is only this one. And let's import the sheet size state. Okay, and go to expected one argument. It just needs some refresh. Okay, now it's okay, and now we have our sizes. Let's call it count or const number of columns, which would be like sheet size dot. Okay, so we have number of columns. This would be like the width divided by something called cell width. We call it now like 100, and we will create const for these. Number of rows. This would be sheet size dot height over 25 pixel. Okay, now let's go to our row or our cell. I would like to add it inside the cell. We would export it as consts. Let's add it above here. Export const cell width, it should be 100. Export const cell height, which should be 25. Let's import these here inside the sheet. Cell height is imported, and cell width imported, not imported. Okay, okay, let's add it. Now everything is imported. We have this number of columns and number of rows. So first we'll start with creating the rows. And we have a very good trick for this one. First, we create an array, spread it, and create an empty array which would have the number of rows. And then we would map each element to be let's call it this is like an empty row or empty element, we don't need it, but let's call it row and row index. This would map index. Okay, let's close the map as well here. This yeah, this needs also to be closed like this. Okay, and then we would have our row inside. We can remove these brackets, and inside our row we would do the same also for our columns. So let's create this one as well. Dot array number of columns dot map. We would have column and column index. This would map to column, and inside our column we would have our cell. We don't need this one, we need it as this. Let's add the key, column index and row index, and yeah, it's key. Let's refresh. Now we have our cells. I think we did something wrong. Yeah, we need to replace these cell height. Yeah, now it should be correct. Now we have created our grid based on the calculation of the width and height. Now let's commit this one as well, and yeah, it's here. What is this? Okay, let's commit all of these. Let's add and add. Create sheet based on cell sizes. Okay, now we have created based on the cell width and height. So this is the first part, like we are calculating them. We also would like to have, like, instead of writing everything on all of this, we need to have each cell ID for each one. So we could pass something called cell ID, which would be a string, and it would be a mixture of row index and column index. Of course it would be complaining because it doesn't know what its cell ID is. Let's go to our cell and add cell ID is a string. Now it should know it. Okay, now each one have cell ID, and instead of like the two that we have here, two here, we would have cell props.cell ID. Props.cell ID for this one, and let's remove this one, and props.cell ID, props.cell ID. It should work. No, it wouldn't work. Why? Because we still have the same state, like all of them have the same state. So in this case, instead of having like a single atom, this is a trick part. Instead of having a single atom, we would have a function that creates atoms based on states. Let's go to the cell value state, and instead of having single atom, we pass it as a function, and it would get something called cell ID, which is a string. And instead of cell only, we would have it as key, and then we will have like cell underscore and cell ID. And the second problem, this is the first problem that we have found, but each time we would start including this function, passing the cell ID, it would return a new function. So this is not good. We need some way to memoize it or like save it. So each time we request the atom or request the function, we only return the already created function if it is already created. If it's not created, we would return a new one. Let's do all of these inside utils folder. Let's create not here. Let's create it here outside. Let's create another folder called utils, and let's call this memoize.ts. Export const memoize function, and basically it's something that gets key and returns something eventually. So it gets some sort of key. Let's call this like cell ID instead of like just random thing. And we need also like the array that will store all of these memoized content. Maybe this would be an object, because we need to create like a map to easily access all of this. This will return. Okay, so if memoized content has cell ID, then return it. If not, we would return the whole function. We would return the created function. Okay, so first we have to run the function. First we will pass like the cell ID, and then we'll pass the function. If it found the ID, we don't invoke the function. If it didn't find the ID, we start to invoke this function. So let's create it first, like memoized content, and it would be cell ID, and then we would here pass the function. Let's call it atom factory, and then we pass this as function, and then return it. Return it. Now we are returning the things that we have already stored or we have already created. If you haven't created, this one would create it. Okay, let's go to our store cell state, and instead of like passing just an atom, let's memoize it. Memoize, import it, and it would take two things. First one is cell ID, second one is our atom. But of course it's not the atom itself, but instead function of the atom. Now we have our cell value. Now we need to go to our cell, and instead of having cell state, we would pass the props with cell ID. Yeah, it would prove it. Let's save, and implicitly has any type. Let's type any for now, and yeah, it needs like to be defined. Okay, let's create the type of this. Let's call it type memoized content, and this would be type like it's an object, and it would have like key, which is string. It has a value, which is a function, and that return, like we could write any for now. Let's equal it, and this is the type of this one. Yeah, now it's we would change this later, but now we could change each one individually. Also we could, like, you see, and it's not like burning our CPU as well. So now we also have like each individual cell being changed. Okay, now let's clear our memoize data, like it's in the atom, and yeah, it's cell value state. Yes, let's clear all of this and let's refresh. Now we have like everything is cleared. Okay, now we will do some CSS styles, but let's first save all of this. I would, yeah, let's add them. Okay, memoize cell value. And make each cell its own value. Okay, now we have created this one. Now let's do some CSS styling. Yeah, okay, let's do all of this. Let's first add one for the cell. I think this also can be removed. Okay, let's start first adding CSS for the cells. Let's first start defining the styles, maybe for the column. This is the first one, so column, it would be width 100 pixel, like for each cell, and height would be 25 pixel. Let's also as border 1 pixel solid, and the color maybe 3/7. Okay, let's also clear all of this and close all, and let's go to this one, and class name equal classes dot column. Okay, first design like for the column. Let also make one for the tables as well. And let's go to our sheet, which would have like for the whole table. So first we would have, let's call it grid, and let's remove like all this spacing, so it would be border spacing. Let's define it with 0. Maybe call it sheet instead of grid. Yeah, and then we go to our sheet, and class name equal classes dot sheet. Yep, now we have like a better look. Now let's do one for the cells, and we would have two designs, one for cell input and one would be for cell label, like which is the final one. Why we need this? Because this input, it's a field, and when you write inside it, it's like overflowing or hiding the other part. But for the cell label, we need to clip it, like we need to give a clip CSS one. Okay, both of them would have like width 100 pixel. Of course, there is way better solutions than this, but yeah. Okay, and this one would have similar height as well. Let's see how they look. Let's close this one, and this one. Let's close all of these and put here inside our cell class name equal classes dot cell input, and the other one will be for cell label. Okay, now we are good. Also, there is something called border box we need to add for the all elements to be not like this expanding. So we would add it maybe here. We don't need all of this. Yeah, we don't need all of this. Let's add here. All elements would have box sizing border box. Each one would be limited to its border eventually. Yep. And let's continue. When we get out of here, you see like it's expanding like this. We don't want this behavior. So there is a CSS called text overflow clip. We should clip it, and then we also need to do white space no wrap to avoid wrapping it. I think we might not applying. Okay, and yeah, I think this would come to like other parts. Okay, and to remove all of this as well, like to make it hidden, like we need to add overflow auto. Yeah, I think we need to refresh maybe. Okay, let's see. Yeah, it's still. Also we need to add for the column here maximum width, because only width is still also keeping it growing. So maximum width 100 pixel. Yes, now it's closed. And we need to make font size for all the components. Body HTML font size 16 to be more visible. Font size 16 pixel. Okay. Yeah, I think it's already applied for everything. Maybe we need to put it here as well. No, so it's okay. Okay, so everything now have our size. Okay, now we have our grid. Nice. Okay. So now the styling has been finished. Let's commit all of this, add changes, grid styling. You of course might add other things, but yeah, it's fine. Maybe there is some other stuff we could add. Okay, let's increase the size of the label. Like this one would be font size 16 pixel to be a little bit bigger. Yeah, now it's better. And yeah, it's changing the height as well. Maybe we could change cell label to be shorter, or remove the padding. Maybe padding 0. Yes, now it's better. Maybe also margin 0 and border 0. Yep, now it's much better. Also, let's make this one line height 25 pixel. 21 pixel, let's try. Yeah, it's better. Maybe 22. Yeah, now it's better. Okay, also we could add some padding, and let's increase this one a little more. I think this is like the limit. Okay, now it's, yeah, it's okayish. Okay, and maybe vertical align middle as well. Yeah, it wouldn't do anything. Okay, we have now the padding. It's great, and there is like some transition effect. So now we could say, yeah, the designs have been done. Okay, improve cell CSS design. Okay, now we have finished the designs. Let's start doing the resizable grid, shall we? So before we start writing the resizer, or the things that would change the size of the grid, let's think about how we are going to implement it. So we have like our Excel sheet, yeah, our Excel sheet here, and there is like some pointer or some dot here. When I click on it, it should change the width and the height of our grid, like the height and width. and depending on this it will change the number of the cells that are created. We currently have a recoil state that it changes the number of cells depending on the size, like it calculates the number of cells depending on the size. Now we need to change the size to change the number of cells. So first thing first, when I want to resize or do something, first thing I will do, I would click on it, like I would click on this dot and then start moving. So this is two parts. First there is the action of clicking, which would start the whole dragging reaction. This is the first one. Then there is the moving part where I start moving the mouse. Then there is the third part where I move my finger from the mouse and end all of this. So first there is something that initiates the drag, and then there is something that do the drag itself while I'm moving, and then there is something that stop the drag. These are the life cycles of the whole resizing system. Of course, then we would have like something that would start all of this, which would be like the handler. We will see this inside the code, which would first like initiate the drag, and initiate the drag would define the behavior of doing the drag, and then stopping the drag would be at the end. Okay, let's see all of this inside our code. So let's start with creating the resizer, which would be like a component here. Let's call it resizer, and then we have resizer.tsx, and of course resizer.module.css. okay, and then let's rfcm and define all of this. Let's make it as a div for now, and it will be just a simple div, so it doesn't need all of this. Okay, of course we could make it like a button or anything. And let's close all of this, and let's go to our sheet. Let's add it here because it would be outside resizer. Of course it doesn't know it. Okay, let's bring it here with these, and we also have an error. We will surely handle it. We need to define all of this inside a div, like some sort of container, because the CSS of the resizer, it would be at the far end, and it need to be like in position absolute, and it would change the size, like it change its position because the table size is changing. So let's define all of these. This is the wrapper class name. We can call it classes dot sheet wrapper, and let's go here and define it as dot sheet wrapper. This has position relative. The other one would have like position absolute. Okay, let's take this one. We have defined it already, and there is also the resizer, and resizer we would take it as the same here as well, and class name is classes dot resizer. Let's define some behavior of this one. Let's define width, maybe 8 pixel, height 8 pixel, background color, and let's take a blue color for now, and position absolute. You will start seeing it now on the screen. Yes, it's here down, left, not left, it's right. Right, it will be 0, and top would be 0, and we would see it like it's bottom. You would see it like here because it's like the whole div is bigger than the table, so we would give the table width, or the wrapper itself would give it width fit content, and it should be down here. Okay, we could also make the resizer a little bit down, maybe like -4 pixel and -8 pixel. Yeah, it would make more sense. And bottom would also -8 pixel. Yeah, that's enough. So now we have it at the far end. Also, we could have like some cursor, and it's not pointer, it is, yeah, to start with SE resize. Now we have some effect. Yep. Okay, we have created the CSS, it is visible, it is good. Now let's go and do the effects of everything. So we have, like we have described, we have the first function, which is do drag, and this is a function. And then we have the second function, it's stop drag. Oh, we forgot the first function is init drag, const init drag, do drag and stop drag. These are the life cycles of each one. And then we have a use effect where when we click on it, we have to start like moving it. So let's define the initial, like when we click on it, we start the moving effect. We of course could define it here as well, like on click, maybe on mouse down. Let's define it here, maybe. Yeah, that's better. Mouse down, it would be init drag, like start the dragging effect. And then like when mouse down, we have to start the dragging effect. When we move the mouse, like start moving it everywhere, so it would be it would be on the table itself. Now we would add an event, but this one would be on the document, because we would make or initiate or do the dragging effect. Let's first, maybe before writing the init drag, we do the drag. So what is the drag is going to do? Basically, it's going to update the width and the height state of our size state. But for initiating the do drag itself, we have to track the mouse movement. So we have document.add event listener, and it would be when mouse, not this one, we would have mouse move, do drag. But when I stop, like when I move up, like I end the whole everything, I need to stop the drag. So it will be document.add event listener dot mouse up stop drag to end the dragging effect. Okay, now doing the dragging, we have an event that we get, which would be a mouse event, and we take from it pointer x, which would be event dot page x, like it's the position of it on the page, and then constant pointer y would be event dot page y. And when we get these values, we need to update the state, so we need to bring the state, and it's here in the store sheet size state, so we would get it const sheet size and set sheet size. This would be from use recoil state, of course, and then sheet size state. We now get the post state, and then set sheet size, and it would be width would be pointer x, and height would be pointer y. Okay, cool. Now we did the starting or initiating the dragging. We have done the do drag. We now have to stop the whole dragging. So the whole dragging would be just like unsubscribing or removing these events. So remove event listener, and second one is move event listener, just to end the whole thing. Okay, let's try. Now we have an error, invalid array length, and I think the error is because like when it says like array size, I think because we are doing division, it might not be like a value, like for it it's not like, yeah, it's not an integer. So let's say floor. I think it's better to go with seal, because each time it would move it's going to increase it, and second one is as well seal. And let's try now. Yep, now we have our resizing. We have now a resizable sheet, and we've increased it. Yep, nice. We have finished the resizing or the resizable. Let's commit this part. Created resizable table grid or sheet. Now we create the axis. Let's start creating the axis part, which like here there would be like ABCD, or here would be like the ABCD, and here would be like 1 2 3 4. So let's do it. Let's call it axis cell, and we would have here axis cell.tsx and axis cell.module.css. CCM. We have created this one. This one would be here and here, so we'd have it like th, maybe it's because it's a header. And let's pass here props.children, because this will be the numbering. Class name equal classes dot access cell. Let's go here with access cell. Of course we don't see it, so it's better to render it. Let's close all and go to the cheat and define the one like ABCD here, and then the numbers. Of course we don't have like ABCD, so we will render now the numbers. So let's first define it. First we define the first row, which would be the first header. This would be above the row here. It's of course like a row, so we define an encapsulator here. We define this one here, we take this one and put it here. Yeah, it wouldn't like it. Yeah. Okay, let's edit this one here. Oh, instead of the, yeah, we were putting it in the wrong way. It should be outside this one. Yep, this is correct. And we would have similar to the columns. So we have array count column or number of columns dot map column. Let's put this one inside function brackets column index create a function. Let's close this helper. It will be access cell. Of course we need to print it. It will take the column index. It is not auto imported again, so let's add it here. Import the row, add the row, copy this one, put here. I did something wrong. It should be this one, access cell, access cell, access cell. Yeah, and yep, now it's rendering some numbers for this one. Let's add also for the cell, we need one here as well. So for each row there would be an outside cell, like on the right at the first start. So let's print it. It should be outside here, this one. No, it should be inside this one here. It's the first one. Okay, so let's do it inside. Now we add the access cell. It's on the left side, so this one would be access cell. Let's close this one, and it would be the row index. Okay, let's see how it looks. Yeah, we need to cancel like the first one. I think this one is coming not from this one. Yeah, we need to remove the first one from the first row, like the first header. So this one would be if cell index is not equal to 0, print this one. If it's equal to 0, print an empty access cell. Yeah, now it's invisible. Now we need to do some styling. Let's get to the access cell and put here maybe background color with triple D's and some padding. Maybe we'll do some padding for pixel, some border, and pixel solid, and this gray color. Yeah, we also need to add one here as well. Okay, so we have these. Yes, looks nice, and it's defined center. Yeah, maybe also define it text align center. Yeah, okay, we need to also add one for the top right. Let's go to the sheet, and number of columns +1. It should work. Yes, now we have created the axes. Next part would be changing these two letters. And we forgot also to add +1 to this one to start from 1 to appear like good Excel. Okay, let's now add changing the numbers to letters. Before writing the code to change the Excel titles from numbers to letters, let's start with thinking what we are trying to achieve. The ultimate goal is to change something from page 10 to page 26. This is the ultimate goal. Changing pages like page 2, 3, 4, any pages, it consists of two operations. First part, we have divisions and we have remainders. We take any number and do division and remainder according to the page that we are currently on or trying to change to, and from that we start to do it again and again until we get all numbers. So if we take the number 365, this is currently in page 10. We change it to page 10, which is the same page. What we first do, remainder operation, and it's on page 10. We will get 5. because this is the remainder of it. And after that we will do a division for the whole number. It would be 36.5. We don't take this number, like we don't take any fractions, and take this and and take this number or this part and redo the operation again on it. So we do again the remainder, it would be 6. We will do division again 10, it would be 3.6. We don't take the least significant part. We will do again remainder, it would be 3, and after that we will do division, which will be 0, and it will be the end of our operation. So this is the part according to base 10. To do it for base 26, it will be the same thing. We will take like 365, do division and do division and do remainders according to base 26, and to get the values according to A, B, C, D. So for the Excel part, we have like A, B, C, D until Z. This is our numbering system for the Excel part. And this would be like starting from 0 and 1, 2, 3 until 25. Okay, this is good, like it's easy. But there is one problem for the Excel sheet, like the Excel sheet transformation, which is that in Excel, like in normal base 10 numbers, you start with, let's go down a little here. Yeah, we will start with 1, 2, 3, 4 until we get to 9, and then we have 10. But for the Excel title problem, we have A, B, C, D, and then Z. But after that we have AA. If you are going to do that for base 10, it wouldn't be 10, it would be 0, 0, which is illogical, because after that we would have like A, B, and according to it, it would be like 0, 1. This is if we are going to the same way or the same numbering of base 10. So why this occurs? Because in base 10, the second part, except like the first part, the second part or any number, it's called like non-zero part or non-zero number. So if we have like 2020, this part doesn't start with 0. It doesn't have like 0 at the start of it, but this part have 0. It can start from 0, but this part cannot start from 0. For the Excel sheet title, this part can start from 0, it's normal, and this part can start from 0. To solve this problem, during the transformation itself, before doing the division, like dividing the thing, we minus 1, like remove 1 from the division part. We will see it inside the code. But basically what we're trying to do is to change this number from minus, like from base 0, or from non-zero base to 0 base. Let's start now creating our function. We will do it inside our utils. It would be numbers to letter, or number to letter, to char, maybe this one, .ts. Let's define it, const number to char, and this takes num, which is a number, and then let's first do the division, const division, and it would be number divided by 26, because this is our base, and this need to be maths.floor because we don't need the fraction part, and yeah, it's num. Okay, and we have the remainder, which is this part, and then we have const. We could say like the current character, or the lowest significant character, and the current char, it would be this string from char code, and we take 9, we take the remainder and plus 97. I will explain all of this now, and then to uppercase. So what we are trying to do, first we do the remainder and we do the division that we said about it, and then take the remainder and do plus 97 and do this function on it. This is to change it from like number to ASCII code. Basically it's just like changing 0 to A, 1 to B, 2 to C, and so on. Like it's a mapper, like you are just like mapping. And then we have now the current one, like we have the current one. Then we do the next one. So the next one would be, we take the division part and we subtract it from 1, and yeah, and we say, is it greater than or equal to 0? I will explain all of this. And we do it again, and we take the division minus 1. Basically says like if the next one have like 0, if it's 0, okay, don't do the operation again. And we add the current car. Maybe I could change it to character, and that would be it. Yep. Yes, and yeah, we don't const, it's return. Okay, let's try it. Let's export it. Let's take this one, and we go to do it for the column, and let's import it. Yep, it's imported. Let's do a refresh. Okay, there's some problems, and yeah, it needs just some return types. Okay. Yep, now we have B, C, D, F, G. Let's do -1 for this one. Just to start from A, because we removed the 0 already. There is a terminal. Yeah, it's running. Okay, now let's try to make this one bigger to see it after a few numbers. Yep, now we are getting A, B, C, D. Now it's working. Okay, and we are seeing some very bad behavior. It's getting smaller. I think this is because probably column is taking width. Yes, this doesn't work. It needs to be minimum width. Now we are having our title. Now we are having like the top and bottom. We could increase our Excel sheet. Let's resize this one. Let's increase it like this. Yeah, now we have our Excel sheet. So now we have done like the top part and also the numping. Okay, now we will come to the last part, which is doing the math equation and making this to become an Excel sheet. Let's commit this part before we go to the next part. And it's here. Close this one. Add all. This we would call it change access title, create or implement access cell header for the sheets, and now it should be done. Now let's go to the next part. Let's do the equation calculation, and we would use a library that already exists. It's called Mathjs, and it's very helpful. Like you just define some equations inside it, and it can evaluate it. Like you give this number or this equation and it would do all what we need to do in the Excel sheets part. So let's start with installing it. Let's go here, stop this one, and yarn add Mathjs and types Mathjs. Now it has finished installing. Let's think what we are trying to do. In any Excel sheet program, you would like to add like equal 10 plus 30. It would do the operations that we want. And of course, when I press enter, it needs like to evaluate it and get outside of this. But this is like a bonus something. It's not necessary. But what we need to do is that when we write something like this, it would do the operation. That's now where we are going to do to use the selectors for our script. Okay, let's first push this one, comment it, edit Maths.js. Okay, now let's go to this, let's minimize it and go to components, cell, and then we have cell, and we would do the selector. And instead of doing here, we would do it inside the store. We could call it evaluated cell value state, because eventually selectors are state. So we have our evaluated state and we call it const evaluated cell value state, and we call selector, and then how selector is going to be defined. Let's check this one out here, and we pass two things. Okay, probably selector also need to be memoized because there is key defined here. So for each cell there would be evaluated cell in this case. So we would do the same thing that we have done with the cell state. Let's copy and paste it here and take the selector. Instead of atom, it will be selector here. Let's take this one, put it here, and let's import selector instead of atom. And now we get this get function, which is going to get the state, and this is the key, and the key would be our cell value state, and we pass cell ID. Now we have gotten the state. Now we are going to do our checks. Let's print it out first. Let's call this one value, and let's print it out just to see it. And let's open the console, clear, and let's increase the size a little. And of course we haven't yet used this one. Let's use it inside our cell. This would be here, const, and yeah, let's use recoil value. Put this one here, this one here, import it, let's import it, and let's name it evaluated cell value. Of course it needs also cell ID, props.cell ID, right here, and let's go down here. It would be instead of this one. Of course it would be a string as well. Evaluated cell state, it's a string. Yeah. We did it wrong. It's not, it shouldn't be here, it should be here. Yeah. Yep, now it's working. And let's refresh. You need to start, yarn start. error. Okay, yeah, multiple things, just one. Yep, it should be now working. Refresh, clear, and let's write 10 plus 30. Get out of here. Okay, we didn't console log it. Okay, clear, refresh, and we probably have some things that not being used. Okay, let's see. Have our evaluator still here? Looks like we are doing something very wrong. We are using the memoize function and we are overwriting the state. So it is better to do this. Of course, like there are better ways to do memoization, but let's do it simple for now. And let's say evaluated cell, and let's add cell ID here. Let's run our function. Yes, now it's running. Let's make sure that we are running correctly. And we would say evaluated cell. Let's take the whole ID. Let's take all of this. Okay. And let's do a refresh. Okay, looks like we have an infinite error. Okay, let's close it and we would need to also change this as well, like change the key. Let's do a refresh. Yes, there's the console. It's way big. Yeah, now it's working. Okay, let's remove all of these and let's do our equation, which would be if value dot start with, and yeah, let's define it as string. If value dot start with equal, then we'll do evaluate, right? We will do evaluate evaluate and this is from Mathjs, import thing from Mathjs. Yeah, it will recognize it. Evaluate. Yes, this is a function. And what we want to evaluate, we want to evaluate the value, but without the equal part. So we would add dot slice 1 to remove the first character. Of course, it would throw now an error, and evaluate, of course, like very big library. It's huge. So it would probably like now throw an error if you try like this. It's okay because it doesn't start with equal, but if you do like this, get outside, yeah, it seems to be working. Yeah, we probably haven't evaluated. Okay, let's see. We probably need to refresh. Let's refresh. Equal 10 plus. Yes, it will break. Why? Because when we write plus, it like evaluate function doesn't understand what we are trying to do. So it is better to put it inside a try catch, close, and put it here, and put this one return value if it's not valid. Yep. Let's now do a refresh. Let's try it now. Equal 10 plus 20. It's still throwing error. Okay, it looks like because we are putting like evaluate from outside. Yeah, it's okay. Let's try it now. 20. Yeah, it needs some refresh. Okay, equal 20 plus 10. Now it's not throwing an error. Yep. We now have some math operations. Yay. Okay, now let's do the last part of our last part, which is if I want to write a1 plus b1, it should evaluate it. So let's do this part now. Let's commit this part and let's add this one and add this one. Created or implemented Excel calculation. Implemented Let's comment this part and it would be implement sheets calculations using Mathjs. Okay. Yeah. Okay, to do the second part, first we need to change, like, we currently we knew this is like 0 0 1 1 and so on, but to enter this like a1 p1, we need some way to change it from a1 to some place in our matrix, like in our atom matrix. So we need to do another equation which would change letters to numbers. Let's do it now, and it would be inside utils, and we would add new file char to numbers with tss, and I already have created this function before. Let's add it here and I would explain it because this one is a little bit complex, or not complex, but it's basically the reverse of what we are trying to do. Let's rename this one. So what we are trying to do is first we get the letters, we split them each one to each letter, and we need to change back this number, like a, we need to change it to its own base, like 10 base. We're mapping like a to 0, b to 1, c to 2. But the issue would be that the first one is easy, like we just add like or change it from XC code or ASCII code to numbers, and then we just like have the number. So for example, if I have this letter, we would do, I could show you like one by one. Like first part, we would do this one, and it would be AC 1 2. For example, when I do it, I now get each part and reverse it. Okay, we of course like eventually are going to filter all of this with like we will filter it in another part. Like we wouldn't have like these numbers. Let's remove this one. Sorry about this. So we have like C and A, and each one is reversed. Why we are doing this? Because this is the lowest significant number. We would change this one to base, like base 10. So we change get the ASCII code, gets its position, and then subtracts 79, which is the difference between like 0 and the first A in the ASCII table. But for the next one, we need to add +1. If you remember, like the first part, we needed to do -1 because the second part of A, B, C, D, like Excel sheet titles, it does have 0. But in normal numbers, no, it doesn't start with 0. So we need to add this +1. And after that, we have to multiply by 26 to get the change from base 26 to base 10. And then eventually we take the number, we get the number. So this is the first one we need to do. Let's push this one as well. Implemented char to number. Okay, now let's do some way to change a1 to 0 0, for example, or 0 1 as well. So I have also implemented this function. Let's create this and call it cell id. Yeah, it's okay, cell id to matrix, and this is .ts, and it's also fairly simple, this one. Let's put it here as well. Let's remove this, and this is to be letter to number, our letter to number function. Yeah, it's short to number. Okay, and this function simply, it just take first part is getting the letters part and then the numbers part, and making the letters part to numbers, like we're using the char functions that we have already created. This one, chars to numbers, and we change the letters to numbers, and now we have like where is it, what is like a1 on our matrix, like it would map to which number, like 0 0 or 1 1 and 2 2 and so on. So now we have made the second function. Now comes the last part, which is a little bit big. Also, I would like paste it and would explain it because it's also quite huge to implement. So let's do this now. Let's now add the last piece of our equation solving. It's basically changing expression or Excel expression to numbers, like 10 plus 30 plus 40. So what we're trying to eventually achieve, we want to take a1 and change it to its position on the matrix, or its atom, or its state. That's what we're trying to get, and take this number and change it, like take the 10 and change it in a1, take the 20 and change it and change b1 to 20, and so on. This is eventually what we want to do. So let's first implement it, and we would call it get equation expression from state.ts. Okay, and let's take the name because we wouldn't write it again, and export const get equation from state. Okay, it will take two parts, take two things. First one, it needs to get the function which gets the state, like how to get the state itself. We pass it to get, and we will use it inside the selector, by the way. And then there is the expression itself, or the mathematical expression, and we need to do the whole equation. So I have already done it, and we will also hide some stuff from it to explain it like one by one. So let's comment this one and comment this one and comment this one. We don't need all of these. So first thing first, what we are trying to get, we are trying first to get the cell values, like a1, what is its value, p1, what is its value. So first we take the expression, get all like a1, b1, c1, this is a regex for it, and it matches. If it's a1, then this is the first, like this is an element, p1, this is another element, and so on, and put it inside regex. I could show it to you. So if I take this one and let's remove this, and let's add a1 plus 10 plus b2 and so on, and if I run the regex expression, of course I need to change it to an array to be more clear, because this is just an iterator. Change it here, and if we run it, yes, because it needs to be like, yeah, I did something horrible. Okay, it needs to be an array, and this one, the string. Okay, and for each array it would have like 0, it would be like A1, and the next 0 it will be P2. So this is what we are trying to get. First we're taking the expressions, and then we are going to get the cell ID to matrices, the ones that we have created. So we call cell ID to matrix indices, and what we are going to do is to pass the cell ID like A1, and please get me 00 or 02 and 01 and so on. Okay, now we have the value. This is like separate thing, and we have the cell value state. This is our state that we are trying to use to get the state from, and we pass it the row and column, which is our cell ID. We could change it to here as well, like, yeah, it is not necessary. Yep, this is the old function. Okay, let's import, yeah, it's should be okay. Yeah, okay, we'll check this one, but let's continue. So we replace this one with cell ID, we get the row and column. After that we get the state of this value, like A1, we get its value, what is current value, like 10, 20, 40. If it doesn't have any value, please return 0. This is what we are trying to do. Let's cancel this part, let's not concern about it. So if we have the value, please return the value, like if it's 10, return 10, if it's 20, return 20, and so on. So this is the whole thing, like just taking the value, taking the like A1, A2, finding it inside the state and returning these numbers. This is what I was trying to achieve. Cool. This one should be above. Let's do this here. Okay, and let's use this one inside our selector, and it's, where is it? It's here. It's inside store. Yeah, evaluated cell state. So let's first evaluate. So we say evaluated expression equal get evaluated state, and it would be have two things. First, it needs the get state function, which is this one, and the second part would be the expression itself, which is the value. This is just to evaluate it. Okay, and we need to go back. Yeah, it wouldn't work. Okay, let's go back to the function. Okay, so after this, after like the first part, this to get the values, we need to replace it inside the equation. So take the equation, replace A1 with 10, for example, replace P2 with 1, and so on. So this is the second part. It's basically just a reduce. It replaces like each value with its number. So let's save it, and of course it would complain because it doesn't know what is this part. Let's close all of this. I don't want all of this. And let's open the get equation expression and only the evaluated state. This is what we want to concentrate on. So cannot find name. Yeah, need to import it. Let's save and get state. Yeah, that needs to define it. Let's define these as any for now. They are functions eventually, but let's define this as for any, just to get everything working. And let's define this as 10, 20. We should equal A1 plus B1 to get outside. Okay, it is not working. Let's see why it is not working. It is not working because we are passing cell ID, which is like A1, A2 to our cell value state, which is not correct. We need to pass instead the row and column. This one would be like the apostrophe, this one. This is the first part. Second part, we are still passing the old value, which would eventually throw an error. We need to take this one, put it instead here to be evaluated, and put the evaluated expression. Refresh. If you put 2, 10, 20, and then we write A1 plus B1 should be 30. And also if I write 25, 26, it should auto update. Okay, this is the first part. The commented part is when we have, for example, C is equal to A1, and I would like to write A1 plus B1 plus C1. It should calculate, but it doesn't, because it doesn't, like when it gets this value which is equal A1, it doesn't know it, so it throws an error. So this is why we added this commented part, which will check if it's another equation, then redo the equation again. So what it will do, first we'll have something called not allowed cells. This is to protect against recursion, because I could change this one instead of A1 to be C1, so I would be myself. So yeah, no, it would throw an error instead of doing all of this. Okay, and this is the first part. Second part, we will do the equation, which is our normal equation. We pass the state again, we pass the value and remove the equal sign from it, which would be only this part, which is only C, and then pass the not allowed value, which we need to pass it here. This is an array of strings, and it is a cell IDs that we don't want it to be passed again. If we found it, then throw an error. And this is why we say it, or what we are trying to say. This is the filtered cells that we have found. So we take the expression, take the IDs, and then try to find it inside our expression. So if I find C1 inside me, like inside the expression itself, I say, okay, this is not evaluated, please throw an error. This is what we are trying to do. So we take the not allowed IDs, loop through all of them, and see if the expression includes any one of them. If the length is more than 0, of course, then throw an error, and that would be it. And this now should work. If I try to refresh, yes, it wouldn't work. Yeah, get state. Yeah, it's just haven't updated yet. Yeah, this one. We need to pass it like an empty default empty array just to bypass it. Yep, let's refresh, and let's say this one is 10, this one is 20, this one is A1, so it's 10, this one is equal to A1 plus C1, it's 20. Yes, of course, if I did just like 20, it would be like 40, because 20, 20, and 40. How to change like this? We could like 30. Now we have a fully working Excel sheet, and yep. Now it's time for small bonuses that we could do to improve our Excel sheet. Let's go to our evaluated cell value and say if the evaluated expression, which is an error that we are returning. Of course, we could like instead throw an error and handle it and all of this, but yeah, let's put this one, and if it's equal error, return error. Of course, if you find you could improve this, please create a PR and let's have a chat about it. Okay, why we are doing this? Because if I change this one to C1 and refresh, yeah, if I write C1, it would throw me like this error, like similar to Excel sheet. And next part we would like to make is that when I write and I press enter, I would like it to be evaluated and to be done with it. And this one is fairly simple. We will just create like an on enter or like on key down event. When you click on it, it's done. Okay, so let's do this one as well. Before this, let's push all of this to GitHub. Evaluate recursive expressions. Evaluate recursive expressions. Excel sheet expressions. Yeah. Okay. Let's now do the last part, which would be defocusing. I would like to call it defocusing. And it would be on key down defocus input field. Defocus input. Defocus input. Yeah. Let's create the handler. By the way, we could change all of this to handler since all of them handle events. Handler, click handler. This one as well. No, let's keep it. Okay, defocus handler or defocus input. Okay, we will do the defocus of the input, and let's do the function here. It would be let's do it here, yeah, since we have like two handlers here. Okay, let's rename it on defocus. Naming doesn't matter for now, but yeah, that's on defocus handler. Const on defocus handler, it's an event and it's a keyboard event. And it's from React. Take this one, and it needs also a type defined. It's from an HTML input element, and we would say if event dot key, not key, it's it's key, is equal to enter, then set is edit mode to false. That would basically what we're trying to do. Let's refresh. If we do like this, enter, yep. One last thing, when I click on this, we have to do like double click, which is not great. I want when I click on this one and then I click this one, it just do it. So let's do this one. And to do the focusing part, like when I click on it, I just click on it. I don't need to do double click. It's basically like we turn it to on, and then we set timeout just to be like after it's turned to true, we have to focus on it. So we put this one and create a function, and we would say input ref dot current dot focus, and of course we need to check if the current exists, and probably it doesn't recognize that this is an input. We need to change the input ref to HTML input element. Yep. Let's refresh, and now it's selected, so we have a fully working Excel sheet plus P5. Yep, and that would be our Excel sheet application. After we have now finished, I will push this application to Netlify so you could see it live. Also, I will do a few small comments to remove all of these errors because they are very small, like something unused, adding small key, but everything is now settled. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will surely reply to them. If we need to create more videos to explain more stuff, please also add them and we will continue these episodes. Looking forward to more side projects to be doing and also improving everything. And thank you and have a nice day. Bye.